The Galactic Council chambers had seen many species rise and fall over the millennia, but never had Ambassador Zethkri witnessed such casual dismissal as what the humans received that day. The crystalline being's multiple eyes focused on the small delegation from Earth, 3 unremarkable bipeds in simple dark clothing, standing calmly before the assembled might of 700 civilizations. "Your request for protected status is denied," announced High Counselor Vrakth, his massive insectoid form clicking with authority. "Humanity lacks the technological advancement, military strength, or strategic resources to warrant Council protection. Your homeworld lies in an unfortunate location along the hegemony's expansion route. We suggest relocation." The lead human, a female with graying hair named Sarah Chen, simply nodded. "We understand your position, Counselor. We had hoped for a different outcome, but we respect the Council's decision." Zethkri found himself intrigued by the human's composure. Most species either raged or groveled when facing extinction. These humans showed neither fear nor anger, just quiet acceptance that seemed almost unsettling. The hegemony representative, a towering reptilian creature called Scifistories, hissed with amusement. "Wise little mammals. Perhaps we will keep some of you as pets when we claim your world. Your docility would make you excellent servants." Something changed in the human's eyes at those words. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees, though Zethkri knew that was impossible with the environmental controls. Sarah Chen's voice remained perfectly level when she spoke. "That would be inadvisable." Scifistories' laugh was like grinding stone. "Threats from a species that hasn't even achieved faster than light travel independently? How delightfully primitive." "Not a threat," Chen replied softly. "A warning. You have 6 standard months before your fleets reach our system. I strongly recommend you reconsider." The hegemony general's scales flared with mockery. "And what will your tiny world do against a fleet of 10,000 ships? Will you throw rocks at us?" Chen exchanged a glance with her companions. "Something like that." The human delegation departed without ceremony, leaving the council chambers buzzing with discussion. Most representatives found the exchange amusing, another minor species about to join the countless others consumed by hegemony expansion. Only a few, like Zethkri, felt a nagging unease at the human's reaction. Over the following weeks, intelligence reports began filtering in that puzzled the council. Human activity had increased dramatically across their single world. Massive construction projects appeared overnight. Industrial output skyrocketed. Most strangely, humans were leaving Earth in unprecedented numbers, spreading across their small solar system and even to nearby star systems in ships that somehow bypassed normal spacetime limitations. "They're evacuating," observed Counselor Yilmata, her ethereal form shimmering with confusion. "But to where? And how? Our scouts report no signs of advanced FTL technology." Zethkri had been conducting his own investigation. What he found in the human databases troubled him deeply. Earth's history was a catalogue of violence unlike anything he'd seen. Wars that consumed entire continents. Weapons capable of destroying cities in single explosions. Conflicts that raged for years over concepts as abstract as ideology or religion. But more disturbing were the patterns. Humans seemed to grow more dangerous when cornered. More creative when desperate. More unified when threatened. Their entire evolutionary history was one of overcoming impossible odds through sheer bloody-minded determination. The hegemony fleet assembled as scheduled, a vast armada that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Scifistories commanded from the flagship, confident in another easy victory. Earth appeared defenseless as they approached, no orbital defenses visible, no fleet rising to meet them. "This will be over quickly," Scifistories hissed to his subordinates. "Begin planetary bombardment. Leave enough infrastructure for our use, but eliminate the population centers." The first wave of ships moved into Earth's orbit and began their deadly work. Cities disappeared under nuclear fire. Oceans boiled. The planet's surface became a hellscape of glass and ash. The hegemony celebrated another successful conquest. They celebrated for exactly 47 minutes. The attack came from everywhere and nowhere. Ships materialized out of empty space with weapon signatures unlike anything in the galactic database. The human vessels moved wrong, impossible physics allowing them to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Energy beams that seemed to violate conservation laws tore through hegemony shields like paper. But it wasn't just the impossible technology. It was the way the humans fought. No mercy. No quarter. No communication attempts. They moved through the hegemony fleet like antibodies destroying an infection, methodical and implacable. Ship after ship simply ceased to exist, not destroyed so much as unmade at the molecular level. SSS Dareth tried to retreat when he realized the magnitude of his error. The humans let his command ship flee, but not before delivering a message. The transmission was brief, just Sarah Chen's voice speaking 5 words that would echo through hegemony command for generations. You should have reconsidered. Goodbye. The fleeing ship made it 3 light years before it simply vanished. No explosion, no debris field. It was there one moment, gone the next, as if it had never existed at all. News of the disaster spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The hegemony, masters of 1,000 worlds, had lost their entire invasion fleet to a species they'd considered barely above animals. The council chambers erupted into chaos as representatives demanded answers. Zethkri found himself studying every piece of intelligence about humanity he could access. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The evacuation hadn't been a retreat. It had been strategic positioning. The humans had seeded their population throughout local space, establishing hidden bases and research facilities. Earth itself had become a trap. The technology they displayed defied current understanding of physics. Faster-than-light communication without quantum entanglement. Energy weapons that seemed to draw power from vacuum itself. Ships that existed in quantum superposition until they chose to manifest. How, he whispered to himself, staring at reports that made no scientific sense. The answer came from an unlikely source. A hegemony intelligence officer, one of the few survivors from a scout ship that had encountered human forces, provided testimony that chilled the council to its core. They didn't develop this technology, the officer reported, his scaled hands shaking. They've had it for decades. Maybe centuries. They've been pretending to be primitive while conducting research that makes our greatest scientists look like children. They let us think we were superior while they studied us, learned our weaknesses, prepared countermeasures for every possible threat. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't been a harmless backwater world. They'd been a sleeping giant, one that the galaxy had foolishly awakened. Every species that had dismissed them, every civilization that had considered them inferior, suddenly faced a terrifying question: what else had they misjudged about these deceptively simple primates? Zethkri realized with growing horror that the humans had been patient. Incredibly, impossibly patient. They'd endured insults, dismissal, even threats of enslavement, waiting for their enemies to reveal their true intentions. Only when the hegemony had shown they intended genocide had the humans finally acted. The galaxy was about to learn why that had been a fatal mistake. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving the first coherent reports from hegemony space. What they heard defied belief. In the span of 72 standard hours, humanity had systematically dismantled one of the galaxy's most feared military powers. Zethkri watched the tactical displays with growing dread. Red markers indicated hegemony worlds that had simply gone dark. No distress signals, no final transmissions, just sudden, complete silence. The pattern was methodical, spreading outward from Earth like a plague of erasure. "This is impossible," declared Admiral Koreth of the Stellar Federation, his blue-scaled face tight with disbelief. "The hegemony controls 300 star systems. They have fortress worlds, automated defense grids, clone armies in the billions. A single primitive world cannot simply make them disappear." But the evidence was undeniable. Long-range sensors showed human ships appearing in hegemony space with the same impossible physics they demonstrated at Earth. The vessels seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making them nearly impossible to track or target. They moved between star systems faster than any known FTL technology should allow. The attack patterns were unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. Humans didn't conquer worlds, they sterilized them. Not with the crude planetary bombardment the hegemony had attempted, but with surgical precision that left planets intact while making every living thing simply cease to exist. Infrastructure remained untouched. Cities stood empty but undamaged. It was as if entire populations had been selectively edited out of reality. "We're receiving a transmission," announced the Council's communications officer, her voice shaking. "It's from the humans. They're requesting permission to address the Council." Silence fell over the chamber. After several long moments, High Counselor Vrak activated the response system. Permission granted. Sarah Chen appeared on the main display, standing in what looked like the bridge of a human vessel. Behind her, Zethkri could see technology that hurt to look at directly, devices whose purposes defied comprehension. When she spoke, her voice carried the same calm authority it had months earlier, but now it resonated with terrible power. "Honored counselors, I come before you to clarify humanity's position regarding recent events in hegemony space. We want to assure the galaxy that our actions were purely defensive in nature." Vrakth's mandibles clicked with nervous energy. "Defensive? You've eliminated an entire stellar empire in 3 days. The hegemony chose to attack our homeworld with the intent of committing genocide," Chen replied without emotion. "They declared their intention to enslave our survivors. When we warned them against this course of action, they laughed. We responded appropriately." "Appropriately?" Admiral Koratha's voice cracked. "You've killed trillions of sentient beings." Something flickered in Chen's eyes, a coldness that made even hardened military officers step back from their displays. "The hegemony killed 3 billion humans when they bombarded Earth. They showed no mercy to civilians, no regard for innocence. We simply returned that consideration exactly as it was given." Zethkri forced himself to speak. "What have you done with the hegemony populations?" "Our sensors show no life signs, but no destruction either." Chen's expression didn't change. "They exist in a quantum state of our choosing. They are neither dead nor alive until we decide which state to collapse their wave functions into. Currently, we're debating whether they deserve the mercy they refuse to show us." The chamber erupted in horrified whispers. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't just developed weapons capable of mass destruction, they'd created technology that could hold entire civilizations in a state of suspended existence, deciding their fates at will. "This is madness," breathed Counselor Yilmata. "Such power, it violates every natural law we understand." "Your understanding is limited," Chen replied simply. "Humanity has been conducting theoretical physics research for over 3 centuries. We've had significant breakthroughs that we chose not to share. The galaxy seemed to prefer thinking of us as primitive, so we allowed that misconception to continue." She paused, letting that revelation sink in. "While you've been expanding territories and fighting over resources, we've been solving the fundamental questions of existence. How to manipulate quantum states at macroscopic scales. How to access the zero-point energy field. How to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Child's play, really, once you understand that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon." The human ambassador gestured, and the display behind her showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Tiny points of light indicated human positions, and Zethkri felt his crystalline structure vibrate with shock. There were thousands of them, spread across every major sector of galactic space. "You've been watching us," he realized. "For how long?" "Since we achieved interstellar travel, approximately 200 years ago. We established observation posts throughout the galaxy, studying your cultures, your technologies, your military capabilities. We learned your languages, decoded your communications, mapped your trade routes and defense networks. We know more about each of your civilizations than you know about yourselves." Admiral Korath struggled to process the implications. "If you've had this capability for 2 centuries, why reveal it now? Why not simply conquer the galaxy?" Chen's laugh was bitter. "Conquer? Why would we want to rule over species that view genocide as an acceptable tool of expansion? We had hoped the galaxy might evolve beyond such barbarism. We offered peaceful coexistence. You chose violence instead. She leaned forward, and her image seemed to loom larger despite the laws of physics. Understand this clearly, counselors. Humanity desires nothing from you except to be left alone. We don't want your territories, your resources, or your submission. We simply want to exist in peace. But, if you threaten us, if you attack our people, if you make the mistake of thinking us weak because we prefer diplomacy to warfare, you will discover why we are the only species in this galaxy that evolved from persistence predators. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Slowly, representatives began to grasp the full scope of their new reality. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring species seeking its place among the stars. They were apex predators who had been hiding their true nature behind a facade of primitive harmlessness. Over the following weeks, intelligence reports painted an even more disturbing picture. Human technology wasn't just advanced, it was fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had seen. They had solved problems that other species considered impossible, developed capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. Their ships didn't travel faster than light, they stepped outside the normal flow of spacetime entirely. Their weapons didn't destroy matter, they convinced reality that the target had never existed. Their communications weren't limited by distance because they had learned to entangle quantum states across galactic distances. Most terrifying of all was the realization that this technology appeared to be scalable. If humans could hold hegemony populations in quantum suspension, what could they do to entire sectors? To the galaxy itself? The Corban Empire, sensing an opportunity in the hegemony's downfall, mobilized their fleets toward former hegemony space. They lasted 6 hours after crossing into human-claimed territory. Their entire armada simply vanished, leaving behind only a message beacon broadcasting Sarah Chen's voice. We warned you. We asked only to be left in peace. If you cannot respect that simple request, we will ensure you never threaten anyone again. The galaxy held its collective breath as the true scope of humanity's response became clear. They weren't just defending themselves, they were systematically eliminating every threat to their existence. Species that had made aggressive moves toward human space found their fleets disabled, their planets quarantined, their leadership mysteriously vanishing during the night. But it wasn't random violence. The humans operated with surgical precision, targeting only those who posed direct threats while leaving peaceful civilizations completely untouched. They seemed to know exactly which individuals and organizations represented dangers, responding to thoughts and intentions as much as actions. Zethkri spent sleepless cycles analyzing every scrap of information about humanity, trying to understand how they had achieved such impossible capabilities. The answer, when it finally came to him, was as terrifying as it was elegant. Humans hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had learned to weaponize consciousness itself, to use the observer effect of quantum mechanics as a tool of warfare. They were fighting a war not just in physical space, but in the quantum foam that underlied all reality. The galaxy had awakened something it was utterly unprepared to face. And the worst part was that humanity had given them every chance to avoid this outcome. They had warned the hegemony. They had asked for peace. They had shown patience and restraint right up until the moment their homeworld burned. Now the galaxy was learning what humans had tried to tell them from the beginning: it was never wise to make them angry. 3 months after the hegemony's disappearance, the galaxy trembled in the grip of what historians would later call the Great Silence. Not since the ancient days of the Void Wars had space felt so empty, so pregnant with terrible possibility. Ambassador Zethkri stood in his private chambers, studying the latest reports with growing desperation. The human response had evolved beyond simple retaliation. They were systematically restructuring galactic civilization, and they were doing it without firing another shot. Trade routes that had operated for millennia suddenly found themselves inconvenient. Ships attempting to carry weapons or military supplies discovered their cargo holds mysteriously empty upon arrival. Hyperspace lanes that connected aggressive civilizations experienced navigational anomalies that made travel impossible, while peaceful species found their journeys shorter and safer than ever before. The humans were editing reality itself, and they were doing it selectively. "Sir," his aide whispered, entering with fresh intelligence reports. "The Thanax Confederacy just announced they're abandoning their territorial expansion program. Their entire military leadership committed mass suicide rather than face the human judgment." Zethkri's crystalline structure shifted colors, reflecting his emotional turmoil. "How many does that make?" 17 major powers have completely restructured their governments in the past month. All toward more peaceful, democratic systems. It's as if. The aide struggled for words. As if they're being influenced somehow. The truth was more disturbing than influence. Intelligence suggested that humans had developed the ability to directly interface with conscious minds on a quantum level. They weren't controlling other species, but they were making the consequences of aggressive thoughts uncomfortable. Leaders who planned invasions found themselves experiencing the death and suffering their actions would cause, feeling every moment of pain from the perspective of their victims. It was psychological warfare on a scale the galaxy had never imagined possible. Sarah Chen's face appeared on screens across civilized space simultaneously, a feat that demonstrated humanity's complete control over galactic communication networks. When she spoke, her words were heard in the native languages of every species, translated not just linguistically but conceptually, ensuring perfect understanding regardless of cultural context. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to resonate in the quantum foam itself. "We find ourselves at a crossroads. For millennia, you have organized your civilizations around the principle that might makes right. The strong prey upon the weak, the aggressive expand at the expense of the peaceful, and violence is accepted as a natural state of existence." Behind her, the display showed images from human databases, scenes of beauty and horror from countless worlds. Art and music from peaceful civilizations, contrasted with the devastation left by conquerors and tyrants. "We offer you a choice. Not surrender, not submission, but evolution. The technology that allows us to exist partially outside normal spacetime also allows us to see the potential futures that branch out from this moment. We have observed thousands of possible timelines, and, in all but one, this galaxy destroys itself within the next 500 years. The images shifted, showing probabilistic models that hurt to contemplate directly. Galactic wars that consumed entire sectors. Supernovas triggered by desperate civilizations. The slow heat death of stars drained to power ultimate weapons. Future after future of escalating violence until nothing remained but empty space and cooling debris. In the single timeline where galactic civilization survives and thrives, aggression becomes obsolete. Not because it is forbidden, but because it becomes unnecessary. Resources become infinite when you can manipulate matter at the quantum level. Territory becomes meaningless when you can exist in multiple dimensional states. Competition for power becomes pointless when consciousness itself can be expanded beyond individual limitations. Zethkri felt something shift in his perception as Chen spoke. It wasn't mind control, but rather a gentle expansion of awareness, allowing him to glimpse possibilities he had never considered. Visions of his own species achieving heights of art and science previously unimaginable, freed from the constant need to defend against aggressive neighbors. "We are not imposing this future upon you," Chen continued. "We are simply removing the obstacles that have prevented you from choosing it freely. No more will the peaceful fall victim to the violent. No more will the curious be destroyed by the fearful. No more will evolution be stunted by those who profit from stagnation." The transmission paused, and, when Chen resumed, her voice carried infinite patience tinged with absolute resolve. "For those who cannot adapt to a peaceful existence, who find meaning only in domination and destruction, we offer a different gift. We will relocate you to a pocket dimension where you can wage eternal war against others of your kind, free from the burden of civilized society. There you may pursue your violent nature without threatening those who seek a better path." The implications rippled through the galactic community like shockwaves. Humanity wasn't offering conquest or subjugation. They were offering quarantine for the incorrigibly violent and transcendence for everyone else. In the days that followed, the galaxy watched in fascination and terror as humanity's promise became reality. The Bloodfang pirates, scourge of 7 sectors, simply vanished during their latest raid. The militaristic hierarchy of Vextar, which had built an empire on the bones of conquered worlds, found their entire civilization transported elsewhere between one moment and the next. But they weren't destroyed. Long-range quantum sensors detected them in a parallel dimensional space, exactly as Chen had promised, locked in eternal combat with other aggressive species who had been given the same choice. They were alive, unharmed, and free to pursue their violent nature without threatening anyone else. Meanwhile, species that embraced peaceful coexistence found themselves gifted with technologies beyond their wildest dreams. The gentle gardeners of Kepler 442 discovered how to communicate directly with plant consciousness, creating ecosystems of unprecedented beauty and productivity. The Historian Collective found their archives expanded to include the complete recorded memories of every individual who had ever lived. Humanity was transforming the galaxy not through force, but through demonstration of what was possible when violence was no longer the default solution to every problem. Zethkri realized with startling clarity that this had always been humanity's plan. They hadn't spent 2 centuries hiding their true capabilities out of fear or deception. They had been waiting for the galaxy to prove that it was irredeemably committed to violence before offering an alternative. The attack on Earth hadn't triggered humanity's anger so much as their pity. They had finally accepted that the galaxy would never voluntarily evolve beyond its primitive obsession with dominance and submission. So they had taken on the burden of forcing that evolution, not through conquest but through the simple expedient of making violence impossible and demonstrating the alternatives. A soft chime indicated an incoming private communication. Zethkri activated the display to find Sarachan looking directly at him, her expression gentle but knowing. "Ambassador," she said quietly. "We've been monitoring your research into our capabilities. Your understanding of our true purpose approaches completeness." Zethkri's colors shifted to patterns of deep respect tinged with apprehension. "You've been preparing for this moment for centuries, haven't you?" Chen nodded. "Every human child learns our true history from an early age. How our species evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey across vast distances through sheer determination. How we survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and countless other extinction events by adapting instead of succumbing. How we learned to work together because our individual survival depended on the group's success." She paused, and Zethkri sensed vast depths of emotion carefully controlled behind her calm exterior. "We also learn about the responsibility that comes with being the apex predator in any ecosystem. The obligation to maintain balance, to ensure the survival of all species within our domain. When we first encountered galactic civilization, we hoped we could fulfill that role through example rather than intervention. But the galaxy chose differently," Zethkri said, understanding flooding through his consciousness. "The galaxy chose violence, again and again and again. Every peaceful overture was seen as weakness. Every attempt at cooperation was exploited by those who viewed compassion as a flaw to be punished. We realized that true peace would never be achieved as long as the violent were allowed to prey upon the peaceful." Chen's image leaned forward slightly, her eyes holding depths that seemed to contain entire universes of possibility. "So we became what we had always been designed to be, Ambassador. The shepherds of this galactic ecosystem. The guardians who ensure that the gentle inheritors of tomorrow are protected from those who would destroy them today." The communication ended, leaving Zethkri alone with the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. They had revealed their true nature not as conquerors but as protectors, not as destroyers but as gardeners cultivating a better future for all conscious life. The galaxy had discovered too late why humans said never make them angry. But perhaps that discovery had come at exactly the right time, before the violence and hatred that had defined galactic civilization for millennia could finally destroy them all. In the end, humanity's anger had been terrible not because it was destructive, but because it was creative. They had channeled their rage at injustice into the will to build something better, transforming their fury at the galaxy's cruelty into the determination to nurture its potential. The age of endless war was ending. The age of infinite possibility was beginning. And, watching over it all were the patient shepherds from Earth, ensuring that this time, peace would not be seen as weakness to be exploited, but as strength to be celebrated. The galaxy had finally learned why it was never wise to make humans angry. But, more importantly, it was beginning to understand why earning their protection was the greatest gift any species could receive.